Good evening, everybody.
Kavod Harab, how are you?
Baruch Hashem, thank you. Just give me 1 second, I'm sorry. Oh, some. Okay. So we're continuing here at the Bet Yosef that we were doing yesterday. So we're talking about here that according to this opinion, the Rashbam, even though we have to fast, but we can have certain types of snacks, things like this. So yeah, I think we're already past the fasting. We were talking about the issue of not eating after the 10th hour, right? Fasting, we're done with that. So, right, we're talking about after the 10th hour. So we said that you cannot have any bread after the 10th hour, but what you can have is snacks, and fruits and, right, even meat, eggs, whatever, all these kinds of things. So regarding this, it says here, Kataba Rosh velo nehera. So, right, the Rosh doesn't agree with this. The Ha'aminan b'tosefta of the brachot, because we said over there in Tosefta, he says, Mevarchin al minet targima bore mine mezonot, that we bless on all kinds of snacks, mezonot. V'aminan hatam, we say there, Den mevarchin bore mine mezonot ela al chameshet haminim. We only bless, right, mezonot for the 5 species of grain. Levad, only that. El alma minet targima. So he says lav. So you see from there that these snacks that we're talking about, la perot inhu, they're not fruits, right? They're in other words cookies and stuff like that, right? Snacks which are mezonot. That's what he's saying. That's what it says in Tshuva. Minet targima, de'aynu minet tavshil ha'asui mechameshet minim. So he says, what are we talking about? All kinds of dishes, right, which are made with, right, with the 5 grains of right, that we bless on them, right, mezonot, or perot v'yirakot, or fruits and vegetables. Mutar lechol v'rabenu satam devarav k'divrei Arif v'Rashbam. So he says the Rabbeinu, the Tur, paskin like the Rif and the Rashbam, mishum de mashmaleh. So what does that mean? He paskin like them that they allow you to have snacks. So why is that? Because since, right, these 5 species, they satiate a person, right? How is he going to eat matzah afterwards, right, with appetite? So I'm sorry, I didn't say it right, just what I just said now. Right? According to the Torah, you're not allowed to have these things which are mezonot, right, which are made from the 5 grains. Why is that? Because they satiate you. And therefore, right, how are you going to be hungry when you eat the matzot? This is the whole thing, right? So therefore, right, according to this opinion, you're not allowed to have even, right, any snacks which are made from mezonot. What does that mean? The 5 grains, right? Because they satiate. Good. Okay, so that's what he's saying. Right. So it says, therefore, how can you eat it after the 10th hour? Right, you're not going to be hungry, as we said. וגם התוספות שכתבו בתחילה כדברי הראש, right? Even Tosfot, it says that they wrote first like the Rosh, ואחר כך כתבו ומיהו בפרק פתרא דיומא, איכא חד שינויה דמשנה ואי בית המה, מה מיני תרגימה פרא, right? So there's also another opinion that they bring there, the Tosfot, which is that when they talk about the word targima, right, which is like snacks basically, right, we're talking about fruits, not really mezonot, not really things which are from the fine grains. Okay, right. So that's the interesting thing here. So we'll see in the Shulchan Aruch, right, how we paskin regarding this issue, right? What you can have and what you cannot have. We'll see exactly what it is. Umash katab b'shem Rambam shelo yimalek reso mehem, and now what she wrote in the name of the Rambam, the tour, right? He wrote that the Rambam says that even though we allow you to have these snacks, right, after the 10th hour, but not to the point where you fill yourself up, you get satiated from it. That we don't want, because then you're not going to be hungry for the matzah. Right? And the truth is, by the way, it's important to understand one thing here, right? Which is that it says in the Talmud, Masechet Brachot, that only really the five species of grain, only they satiate a person, really, like actually get satiated. All the other things, that a person eats, whether they're fruits or vegetables, right? Even, things which are like quite filling, like bananas, and things like this, right? Or potatoes even, right? Potatoes are quite filling. But at the same time, they don't really satiate like the 5 species of grain. And therefore, right, it's not really the same thing, it's a different thing altogether. So why am I telling you this? Because the Rambam is telling you here is like this, right? That we don't allow you to have, as we said, right, from the 5 species of grain, we don't want you to have anything from that after the 10th hour, right, on that day. But when it comes to other things, even though they don't really satiate you per se, but, filling up your stomach with it anyway is not a good idea, because it'll, you won't be hungry so much for the matzah. You won't eat the matzah with appetite. So therefore, even though these things don't really satiate you, nevertheless, we don't want you to get filled up with it. That's the whole thing. Okay, so regarding this, says the Bet Yosef, who beperk vav, right? It's in the 6th parak in the Rambam. Again, mashma v'di also the Rif like writes like this. Upashta the mil tahachi. So he says this is the simple meaning, right? Hachi muchach shekol shemelek chesom meza davar sheyeh lo yochal shuv b'leila matzah te'avon. Right. So as we said, right, the bottom line is like this: if you get filled up from any kind of food, whatever it may be, right, so you won't be really hungry for the matzah, and therefore we don't want you to eat that. What does that mean? Don't get filled up. So meaning what? Eat a little bit, right? To have a little, a little snack, whatever, right? Or a big snack even, right? But don't get filled up. Okay, good. By the way, by the Sfardim, the custom by us, I was told by my rabbi also, Maran Rabbi Shalom, that the custom by us, by the Sfardim, and also, by the way, my family, I saw this custom as well. That what we do is when we start the Haggadah at night, right, on the eve of Passover, on the night of Passover, we make kiddush, right? The first thing we do is make kiddush. That's the number one issue, right? That goes on there. The first cup of wine with the kiddush, right? So what happens is that after the kiddush, sometimes we're like kind of hungry because we haven't eaten for a while, and it's already like, let's say, for argument's sake, right? Let's say it's about 8 o'clock, 8 p.m. It should be, right? If you're starting at 9, you're already behind the 8 ball. Not a good idea to start 9 o'clock. So, try to start on time, So 8 o'clock is good. 8:30, not too bad. 9 o'clock, you're a little bit late, right? 10 o'clock, you're really late, right? So not a good idea to go that late. But anyway, right? The point is that, you're hungry now, like this is dinner time, you should be eating something already, but you can't really have dinner yet because you haven't said the Haggadah, right? So you got to first read the Haggadah. And so what you do is we have a little snack, once we make the Kiddush, you're allowed to eat already, right? On the holiday. So what we do, right, by us, the custom is that we have, some eggs, and we have a little, snack, maybe some chocolate, right? Whatever. Something to hold you over a little bit until, we eat the dinner, until we eat the matzot. So those things will not fill you up, having like one or two eggs or whatever will not really fill you up so much, or, a little chocolate or whatever, a little snack there, a little fruit, whatever. And so things like this you can have, not get, as we said, don't get filled up. But you can, so the custom is to do that because otherwise it's really hard to wait, because the Agadah takes the Haggadah takes about, depending on the family, right? It could be from anywhere from an hour and a half to 3 hours to read. Right? Some families are fast, some families are a little bit slower, right? They do a little bit more, right? Extrapolation, darashot, right? So they say, okay, so it depends on the speed, right? But either way, right? You're not going to be eating until around, I don't know, let's say, right? Earliest, if you're lucky, you'll eat at 10, but more realistically, it's going to be probably around 11. You know what I mean? 11 o'clock. So, you can't wait that long, on an empty stomach and do the Haggadah with concentration. So it's good to have a little snack. So that's what we do, right? We have a little snack there after we make the Kiddush. And this way it holds us over, it's really a good thing to do. Okay. Right, just telling you that so you should know, right? So you're allowed to eat after you make the Kiddush, but don't get filled up. That's something else, right? That we don't want. Because you're going to be eating the matzot, right, in about 2 hours or so, right? So you got to have some appetite there. Right? That's the idea. Okay, good. So he goes on here, right? Quoting the Torah. Umash katav yain mutar lishtot. Right? So that which we said right yesterday, we read in the Torah. What you are allowed to do is to drink wine, right? That's permitted. Let's say you want to have like one or two, glasses of wine before, the holiday, right? That's okay. You're allowed to do that. So as we said, right, in the Torah, the reason we said you're allowed to have wine is because it makes you actually even more, gives you more of an appetite. So wine, it's like an appetizer. It's like aperitif, whatever you want to call it, right? So it gives you an appetite. So it's good to actually drink wine. Nothing wrong with it. So therefore, you're allowed to have as much as you want. But don't get drunk. Otherwise, you're gonna fall asleep, right? That's already something else. We don't want that, right? That's for sure we don't want. It's not Purim, you know what I mean? It's Pesach. Don't get the holidays mixed up, right? The one with the other. Not the same thing. Okay, right? So that's the story. תהה איתה בריש פרק כיצד מברכים, וחמרה מסעיד והרבה, הבה שתי חמרה כל מעלה יומה, פסחה, כי איך דניגרא לי בניחו מצה, תפה טובה גריר פורתא סעיד, וכתבו התוספות, מכאן משמע שאסור לשתות יין בערב פסח, מן המנחה ולמעלה, right? So, interesting, right? That there's a Gemara that he brings here, which teaches us that actually, right, wine has the power to satiate. So it says, therefore, it says Tosfot, from here it's implied that you're not allowed to have wine, right? Erev Pesach, because it's going to satiate you. But we just said just the opposite, right? So we have to figure out what's the story. So therefore, it says Tosfot something interesting, right? If you want to drink wine, he says, what you got to do is drink a lot. Then it's going to make you hungry, right? But if you drink a little bit, actually, it'll make you satiated. Interesting. Right? But the purta lo. So that's exactly what it says. So if that's the case, right? It says, ask the Bet Yosef over here. How did the Torah write that you're allowed to drink as much as you want, right? In other words, whether it's a little or a lot, you can drink as much as wine as you want on Erev Pesach. But according to Tosfot, you can't do that, according to this Gemara. So that's the question. So what's the answer? Let's see. אפשר ששום מפרש חולק על סברת התוספות והוא סובר דפורתא נמי שרע. So he says, right, that it's possible that there's another opinion besides the Tosfot, right, another commentary on the Talmud, which holds that even a little bit is okay. Why is that? But didn't we just say, right, that wine satiates you? According to the Gemara. So the answer is, right, that it satiates you a little bit, but not really that much. It's not really gonna make you so satiated that you won't want to eat you won't want to eat matzot. It's not that much, right? It satiates you a little bit, holds you over for a little while. That's the whole thing, right? But it doesn't, it's not like having a meal. It's not the same thing. Okay. Good. אינו סועד כל כך, שיעשה מחמת כן, לשתותו בערב פסח, משעה שעשית למעלה. והדה אמינן רבה הווה שתה חמרה כל מה ליום הפסחה, לאו למימה דאם איתה דסעיד הווה אסור למשתה, אלא הכי כאמר, הכי אפשר למימה דחמרה סעיד כלל, רבה שתה כי הכי דנגררה לליבי עלמא לא סעיד כלל, עד רבה מגרר גריר, ואם כן פורתא אף אגב דסעיד קצת שרה ואפשר דמתניתין. So he's basically explaining, right, the Talmud to fit into just the context of what we just said. So I won't repeat it, right? I already said it to you. So I'll just read on, right? דייקן הכי קטנה ערבי פסחים סמוך למנחה לא יאכל דם ולא קטנה לא יאכל ולא ישתה. Right, so in other words, he says also in the Talmud, right, it says like this. It says you shouldn't eat Erev Pesach after the 10th hour, but it doesn't say don't drink, right? That doesn't say that. So therefore, right, it implies that you're allowed to drink as much as you want. That's the story. By the way, don't even think about drinking beer, right? Because beer is chametz, you know that, right? So no. Don't even think about it, right? We're talking about wine only, right? But beer is chametz. You can't have that on Passover, right? No beer on Passover. By the way, if you do have beer, in your closet somewhere, you got to sell it to a goy, or throw it away, right? You don't want to throw it away, I guess. Why would you want to throw away, a case of beer, right? So, if you don't want to throw it away, sell it to a goy. You got to go to the shul, and the rabbi will sell it for you, right? Whatever. That's the story. Yeah. So therefore, right, as we said, drinking is okay according to this, right? As we're saying. ואף אגב דאיתא בריש פרק ערבי פסחים, אמר רבא מנה אמינא לה דתחמרא מיגרא גרי, יתנן בין הכוסות הללו, אם רצה לשתות ישתה, ואם עמד מצד סעיד, עמי ישתה, הקא אחי למצא אכילת גסה, אלא שמע מינא מיגרא גרי, right? So he says the truth is, right, that it's a good point he makes over here, which is that the actual sequence of what we do in the Haggadah proves, right, that this is correct, what we just said. How is that? Because after all, right, what do? Before we do the meal and we eat the matzah, we have already 2 cups of wine, right? So how do we allow you to have 2 cups of wine if it satiates you? Then you're not going to eat the matzah, right, with appetite. So therefore, you see from there, that proves to you that wine doesn't really satiate you, that much anyway, right? Maybe a little bit. But it's not enough, to spoil your matzah eating, right? It's not that much. So therefore, right, it comes out really good, the whole thing comes out very nice and smooth. Okay. Good. יש לומר דשני הטם שהוא שותה בין הכוסות ותכף אוכל מצה, תכף דסעיד אפילו פורטה כשאוכל מצה מסמוך אינו אוכלה דתיאבון, אבל כששותה קודם משתה חשך, מה שהיין סועד בלב כבר עבר בשעה שהוא בא לאכול מצה, אלא שמכל מקום יש לתמוע למה לא חשש רבנו לכתוב סברת התוספות. So right, he says in the end over here something interesting, right? The Shulchan Bet Yosef says that, the Tur wrote all this halacha, right, as we saw yesterday, very nice, but he says he forgot to do one thing over here, which is he didn't bring the opinion of Tosfot, right? Which is strange. Why shouldn't he bring it, right? And according to Tosfot, um, it's a problem, to drink wine if it's a little bit, right? And the Torah apparently should have brought it, at least as an opinion, right? Even if he doesn't paskin like it. That's what he's saying, right? Okay, good question. What can I tell you? So let's see the Shulchan Aruch here, and we'll get some more clarity about what's going on here. The bottom line in halacha, right? What's the halacha? Yeah, we got to pull it up. Maybe not. Let's see. Should be here somewhere. Oh, I dropped it. I'm sorry. Sorry about that. Dropped. I don't know why it dropped. I pressed the wrong button somewhere. Well, Shulchan Aruch is missing. I got to pull it up because this is a new chapter. Indeed. Second. Where's Samichet? This is not what I need here. Yeah, this one. So this is right. Fine. Okay, got it. All right. Yeah. So says the Shulchan Aruch, Asur lechol pat misha asitun mala. Right. You're not allowed to have bread after the 10th hour. Right, as we said on Erev Pesach. What time is this? Approximately. Right. As I said, in my area, this is about 4 p.m. From that time and onward, you're not allowed to have bread. Why is that? So you should eat the matzot, right, with appetite, with an appetite. But it says you can have a little fruit and vegetables, right? Things like this. Right? But don't get, as we said, right? Don't get filled up with these things. So don't fill yourself with anything, as we said. So then he brings in the parentheses over here, right? What we saw that Imo Istanis, if he's sensitive, right? If he's a delicate person, he shouldn't even eat a little bit, right? Because that'll fill him up. He won't get hungry. So then it's all forbidden, right? That's what he says. Okay, v'yain me'at lo yishte mishum de mis'ad side. Oh, so he says, right, that, okay, so what about wine? Right, so he says, don't drink a little bit. Oh, right, so this is like Tosfot. Ah, Tosfot, as we said, you shouldn't drink a little bit. But if you want to drink a lot, right, you can drink a lot. Why is that? Because when you drink a lot, right, it'll make you even more hungry. Right? It's like an appetizer. So that's the story. Yeah. So if you have any questions, let me know. Otherwise, we'll go on. That's very interesting. You're passing like the Tosfot and not like the Tur. Because the Tur said you're allowed to drink whether it's a little bit or a lot, you can drink, no problem. Hmm. Okay, so let's go to bet. Try another one. Right. So as we said yesterday, right, obviously the question comes up, right? You're telling me don't eat bread on Erev Pesach, right? What bread can I eat, right? It's already forbidden to eat bread, right? The chametz is already forbidden to eat at that time. Chametz becomes forbidden, as we said yesterday, after the fourth hour, right? And now we're talking about the 10th hour over here. So what kind of bread can a person have? Right? So if you're going to tell me it's chametz, it's forbidden. If you're going to tell me it's matzah, it's also forbidden, right? You're not allowed to have matzah at this time. So then what can you have? So the only thing which you have left is matzah shira, right? That's what you can have. Matzah, which is made by, with fruit juice, wine, or eggs, whatever, right? It's needed with those things because they don't leaven, as we said. They have. So why is that allowed to use matzah shira? Because matzah shira doesn't have the taste of matzah. It has a different taste. So it's not going to ruin your appetite for matzah as much, right? Right, whatever, right? So therefore, you can have that. But after the 10th hour, even that's forbidden, right? So you can have that before the 10th hour, matzah shira. After the 10th hour, even matzah shira is asur, forbidden. That's what we're saying. So regarding that, right, says the Beit Yosef here, זה לראשון הראש, בריש פרק הרבה פסחים, right? The Rosh says over there, הקטן סמוך למנחה לא יאכל המקמה הכי אכיל. So the Rosh says, right, as we said, that before the 10th hour, you're allowed to have bread, right? What kind of bread? ומי מצה אכיל חמץ משש שעות ומעלה. So we just said, right, it's going through that whole motion, what we just said now. אסור מדאורייתא, ומעלה אסור מדאורייתא, ומצה נמי לא אכיל דאמינא בירושלמי, האוכל מצה בערב פסח כאילו בועל ארוסתו בבית חמיב, ואין מיני תרגימה Ha'aminan Teshare? Right, so the Rosh is asking, right, what kind of matzah are we talking about? Everything is forbidden. So the only answer is, matzah shira. It's going to be matzah shira. Matzah achid, you can eat. Teham, b'yaminan de'asur le'echol matzah be'erev Pesach, heno b'matzah sheruya letzet ba yedei chovato. Right, so sheruya, right. So the only matzah that you can possibly have on Erev Pesach is matzah shira. That's exactly what the Rosh is saying. It's just like we described. Okay, good. So then it goes on. בהדה אמרינן בירושלמי האוכל מצה בערב פסח כבעל ארוסתו בבית חמיב, ובבעל ארוסתו בבית חמיב לוקח פירוש מכת מרדות כתבוע רביף וראש, בפרק אלו עוברים. Second. Yep. ברמב"ם פרק ו' בכתב בראש וכתב, הראש נראית דווקא מזמן איסור חמץ ואילך כתב הר"ן, שכן דעת הרזה ברמב"ן, והשיב עליו ואמר דסוגיית הירושלמי מוחד דאכול היום כולו אסור בהר"ן. So he brings over here a dispute, right, regarding the issue of eating matzah on Erev Pesach. What does that mean? As we said, right, that when it comes to regular matzah that we can use for the mitzvah, with that taste, no fruit juice, right? No sweetness there, no nothing, right? So it's a different taste. So that matzah, which we can use for Erev Pesach, for the mitzvah, you're not allowed to have that all day on, right, the day before, right, on Erev Pesach. You're not allowed to have it. So the question now becomes, from when does it become forbidden, right? So there's one opinion here he brings here, which says it's forbidden all day, right? Which is the custom to nowadays. There's another opinion that it's only forbidden from the time that, chametz becomes forbidden, which is after the fourth hour, as we said, right? So who says what, right, over here? Let's just make sure we got the whole thing, right, down. So the Rosh says, right, that it's only from the time that chametz is forbidden, after the 4th hour. But comes the Ran, right, and says, yeah, that's what the Razah also holds that way. But the Ramban doesn't agree. That he says it's all day. So we have machloket, as we said, right, regarding this. והר"ן דחה ראייתו בהרב מגיד כתב שמדברי הרמב"ם נראה שכל היום אסור. So the Ran disagrees with that, and then he says, right, that the Rav Magid says Rambam, according to Rambam, it's forbidden all day. So it's like pretty much down the line here, right? We have machloket. And as far as I remember, right, the rule is that we don't eat it all day. That's pretty much for sure. We'll see the Shulchan Aruch exactly, right? But that's the story there. כתוב בתרומת הדשן, דקתן שלא הגיע לכלל דעת כל כך שיודע ומבין מה שמספרים לו מניסים ונפלאות ביציאת מצרים, אפשר להאכילו. So he says, right, תרומת הדשן, that when you have a child, he doesn't understand yet, right? He's not old enough to understand about the miracles of Passover, right? Pesach, the Exodus, right? All this kind of stuff. You're allowed to feed him matzot on Erev Pesach. So, in other words, he's telling you basically, for small children, it's allowed. But he says, once he's already old enough to understand these things, which is probably around the age of, I don't know, 6, let's say, right, for argument's sake, around the age of 6, could be a little bit more or less, right, whatever, depending on the child. So then you're not allowed to feed him anymore, right? The matzah on Erev Pesach. כתב רבנו ירוחם, so says רבנו ירוחם, יש נהגו שלא לאכול חזרת קודם פסח. So he says, there's also another custom, he says, which is that we don't eat chazeret on Erev Pesach, right? What is chazeret, by the way? Anybody know? Chazeret is romaine lettuce, right? Which is what we use for maror. The smart people, right? The smart people use romaine lettuce. The people who are not so smart, they use other things. We'll talk about that later on, right? We'll talk about that. But anyway, right? The point is that you shouldn't eat that either. He says, why? Because if you eat it before on Erev Pesach, you won't really have an appetite for it during Pesach, during the Haggadah. So therefore, refrain from that too. So don't make any salad, right, with romaine lettuce on Erev Pesach. Wait for Haggadah and then have it for maror. That's what we're saying. By the way, iceberg lettuce would be allowed, no problem, right? We're not talking about that. That's a different species. Romaine lettuce is maror. Iceberg lettuce is not maror. So therefore, iceberg lettuce, you can make a salad, no problem, right? We got no issues with that. Okay, so anyway, right, let's go on. L'chen haya noheg Rashba, he says that's always the custom of the Rashba, that he wouldn't eat romaine lettuce on Erev Pesach. Oh, God bless his soul. Lo sheya asur ela shelo shenashon minhag kalmanim. So he said, not because it's forbidden, according to halacha. There's no prohibition. In other words, it's not like matzah, the rabbis didn't decree on that. They didn't decree on maror. But it says like a custom, so he didn't want to shake up, the custom, so he did like the custom. Then tam leminagahu ve'ani lo nagnu ken. Right? So it says, but it says Beit Yosef Maran that he says we don't have this custom, So in other words, we can have romaine lettuce on Erev Pesach. There's no issue with that, right? So they only decreed when it comes to matzah, right? But they did not decree when it comes to maror. So no problem, no issues with that. Okay, so that's the Bet Yosef. So let's see the Shulchan Aruch here. Bet. So says the Shulchan Aruch like this. Kodem sha'ah asirit mutar lechol matzah ashira. Oh, as we said, right? Before the 10th hour, as we said, right? My time, it's about 4 p.m. check your local calendar to see what's going on with you. Right? If you need some help, I'll help you, by the way. Give me a buzz and I'll help you out with that. If you need some help with that. To figure out when is the 10th hour. So, right, or you can ask me now. Whatever it is. So anyway, right, we talked about it yesterday. We spoke about it a little bit. We're talking about basically like 3 hours after midday, right? But midday is not 12 o'clock. It's the halakhic midday. Anyway, right, getting back to what we're saying here, that before the 10th hour, you're allowed to have matzah ashira, right? Which is, made with fruit juice, wine, right? Or egg matzah. It's called matzah ashira. All these things. Right? Aval matzah sheyotzin ba belayla asurin lechol. But it says Ramah here, but you're not allowed to have regular matzah, right? That we use for the mitzvah. Matzah shmura, right? That you cannot have. וקטן שאינו יודע מה שמספרים בלילה במציאת מצרים מותר להכילו. So he brings right what we saw in the Bet Yosef, in the name of the Trumat Edition, that if he's a small kid, he doesn't know about the stories, about Passover, he doesn't know those stories about what happened over there, right? The miracles and all that. We can give him right some matzot to eat, no problem. He also brings down this, right, that some have also custom not to eat romaine lettuce, right, on Erev Pesach, in order they should eat maror, right, with an appetite. Also, it says the first day of Passover as well. You should eat also the second night, right? Because the second night, in the diaspora, right, we have 2 nights of Haggadah, right? We have double night, right? So we double it. So therefore, the second day is also it's going to be an issue there. That's what he's saying. Okay. נוהגים קצת למטה באכילה מצה ביום ראשון מהתמה. So that's why the custom is to diminish, eating matzah that day, right? This because of this purpose, of this reason. ויש מחמירים עוד שלא לאכול פירות. So look what he says. Right? Some people are even stringent. They don't eat fruits either. כדי שלאכול חרוסת לטבעון. Why? Because they should eat the charoset with appetite, right? These are all customs, they're not really obligation, these things. So it says, right, Rama, don't be concerned about this custom, it's going a little too far. ויש מחמירים שלא לפרר או לשבור המצות בערב פסח, שלא לבוא לאכול מהם. So it says, some are also stringent, right, not to grind up, or break, the matzot on Erev Pesach in order not to eat from them, right? Ben lachush gam lazeh says that's also not really important, right? You don't have to be concerned about that. Matzah shenefa ketikna ve'achar kach nitpara v'nilosha beyain v'shemen ena nikret matzah ashira ve'asura. So look what the Ramah says, right? This is, by the way, an important point over here. Important point that what the Ramah is bringing here, which is that, as we said, right, that matzah ashira is allowed on Erev Pesach, right? With fruit juice, all this stuff. That egg matzah, right? Whatever you can have, right? But he makes a good point here, which is that if you're gonna take ground up matzah, which was already baked, right, and ground into a flour, you can, people sell this right in the stores. We buy this stuff. So I think it's called matzah meal, whatever. I don't know. God knows what it's called. Anyway, right? He says that if they took that flour, right, which was already baked matzah, okay, and they made it into matzah meal, whatever it's called, and then they kneaded it, and right with wine or right with oil, and only cut matzah shira. It's not called matzah shira anymore. Vesra, it's forbidden. It's forbidden le'echla ber Pesach. So that you're not allowed to have. That's not called matzah shira. Why is that? But didn't you need it with fruit juice, right, or with oil or whatever? So why isn't that called matzah shira? Because it was already baked one time as a regular matzah, and then it was ground up, and then rebaked again, right, and re-kneaded. That's not called matzah shira. Matzah shira means it was originally kneaded with fruit juice or eggs or whatever, right? Those things, right, or oil, whatever, all those things. So that's called matzah shira, but otherwise it's not called matzah shira. It's a good point, by the way, right? So you have to be careful about that. So what does that mean? According to this, if you buy, there's a practical application here for us as well. I'll tell you what it is. Let's say, for instance, right, you go to the store and you have these companies, right, that make, like Manischewitz, they make these cakes, for Passover, which are kosher for Passover, but they're made from matzah meal. So according to this, you can't have it on Erev Pesach, that cake, because it's already baked as matzah one time and then re-kneaded again. So therefore, you can't have that. So what am I telling you, right? Be careful what you eat. Look at the look at the ingredients, because if that cake or those cookies are made, there are also, by the way, cakes and cookies which are made with other ingredients. But if it's made from matzah meal, right, you can't have it Erev Pesach, because you're eating matzah, basically. That's what he's saying, right? By the way, there's a lot to discuss about this. There's a little bit more of a detail here involved, and I'll tell you what it is. I guess we can discuss it now because it's a good point here. Good time to bring it up. I'll tell you what I'm talking about. You know that when you go to the store, right, you have two types of matzah, right? You have regular, matzah, which is made with a machine, and it's not shmura, right? It's not guarded matzah. It's just, for the holiday. It's not for the agadah. It's not for the mitzvah. So you're allowed to buy that, no problem. But for the mitzvah, you have to use handmade, matzot, which are made, guarded, shmura. You got to buy a special batch for that, right? So the thing is, you got to buy. You got to buy a special batch, as we said. As we said, right? You got to. One second, I'm sorry. Yeah. So as we said, right, that yeah, I'm sorry. I just remembered what I was talking about. Something slipped my mind. So as we said, right, that there's two types of matzah, right? As we said, the regular box matzah, and then you have the matzah shmura, which is guarded. So the truth is, right, that the regular box matzah, since it's not really shmura most of the time, right? Sometimes it is, by the way, but usually, right, the garden variety is not shmura. So therefore, right, that matzah, technically speaking, you can have it on Erev Pesach. Why is that? Because only the matzah, which is for the mitzvah, you cannot have. And this is not fitting for the mitzvah because it's not guarded. So technically speaking, you can have that. So why am I telling you this? If it was made, right, that cake, Manischewitz, whatever, right, that whatever, they made it with the regular matzah meal. It wasn't shmura. It wasn't guarded. So then, apparently, you could have that, right, on Erev Pesach because it's not shmura matzah. So therefore, there's no prohibition to have it on Erev Pesach. This is the way I see in some books, that they wrote like this. I think my rabbi also, Provadia, he wrote about this as well. He says that it's allowed to do that, especially in time of need, So, right, you know what means time of need, right? Time of needing, right? If you're needing, I'm joking, but right, that's the story, So anyway, right, that's pretty much the situation with this whole thing.
Kabbalah Taraf, and this same matzah, can we eat it between the 4th and the 10th hour?
Right. So, yeah, the truth is, you can have it all day,
Okay.
In other words, when we're talking about the 4th hour, we're talking about only chametz is forbidden, right?
After the 4th hour, excuse me.
Right, right.
So after the 4th hour and no later than the 10th hour, yeah?
Right. So then you can have, as we said, right, matzah shira, right, egg matzah, right? But as we said, right, that technically speaking, this would also be allowed if it was made from regular matzah, which is not, fitting for the mitzvah.
Okay. And this between the 4th hour and the 10th hour, does that apply also on the second night of Pesach, the second day, excuse me, or, here in the diaspora?
Right. So in other words, you're asking me, does the prohibition of eating, apply also to the second day?
Correct. During
Right?
those hours.
Yeah. So the truth is, that there's what to say from both sides regarding that, right? On the one hand, right, the sages said, that we have to do everything the second day just like we did the first day. But the truth is, that I don't think it applies to this. It doesn't stretch this far. So the truth is that we can't really, say that it's forbidden on the second day. Because you know why? The second day, the whole Haggadah that we do, right? The second night, Haggadah, is only it's rabbinical. It's not from the Torah. Everything is rabbinical there. So therefore, right, we can't be so stringent about that, like we are the first night. So therefore, technically speaking, there's no prohibition, the second night, all the things that we just mentioned here. But as the Ramah says, right, it's a good idea, like it's a custom, to refrain a little bit, to eat a little bit less. You know what I mean? In other words, it's not a prohibition, but somebody who's like really, on the ball, he'll do it in a way that he's going to be hungry that night. You know what I mean? That's the bottom line, right? Even the second night, right? You should do it in a way that you're going to be hungry a little bit, so you can eat the matzot with appetite. But I can't tell you that it's a prohibition, because the truth is it's not written like that. That there's a prohibition going on there. So, B'ezras Hashem, we'll continue talking about this next time. Tomorrow, B'ezras Hashem, because I'm gonna, check that source, that I told you regarding the things I just told you just now. I'm gonna check it again just to make sure that I said it right, because I'm just, from my recollection, that's the way it is. But I'll check it again just to make sure, and B'ezras Hashem will make sure that we do everything the right way. But anyway, right, as we said, thanks for coming. Be blessed with wealth and health and happiness. B'ezras Hashem, we'll see you tomorrow. Chazak Baruch, Laila Tov.
Kavod Harav, thank you so much.
All the best.